ride with me on this, all right? Just a wild scenario in which the Steelers fly out to Las Vegas and beat the Raiders without George Pickens having a meaningful contribution. Can't really do it, can you? Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Pickens did not speak with the media yesterday. He's yet to do that following his various antics Sunday night against the Cowboys, from the ridiculous eye black message to the lazy routes he was running to the helmet he tried to rip off the Dallas player at the very end. And when I say that he hasn't spoken with any reporter, I mean that. There's not one. There's no exceptions to this. Now, I'll stop you dead in your tracks right there before I get the requisite, who cares? Leave him alone. Let George be George. Why does it matter if he can answer your questions or not? Why won't you evil media something. And I'll address that as I always do, not speaking for anybody else, just for me. I don't care at all what he has to say, all right? Like zero. I recognize that it's part of my job to ask questions of players who are involved in significant situations. And if I were able to somehow magically get some one-on-one with George and he was to say some inflammatory things, would that burnish either my or our company's brand? Sure, it would. But that's pretty unlikely. So do I care if George speaks for some selfish purpose? No, because when he does so, he's going to do it in front of everybody, and everybody will have the same quotes and the same story. So scratch that one right off the list. Now then, why does it matter? Why is it a real thing to the team that George hasn't spoken to the media? I'll answer that with a single word, and that's accountability. You know who wants more than anybody else to have George speak to the media? Right, his teammates. Because they do it. They stand there. They face the questions, and in this event, they're answering for some of the stuff that he does that they can't stand, but that they also can't really say too much about without speaking in tongues. They're the ones who want him to face the cameras and the microphones. And you know who else should want that? Right. It was 3 years ago, as memory serves, that Chase Claypool was part of that final fateful drive against the Vikings in which he made a nice catch and then paused and set the ball down and signaled first down. And then one of his teammates comes over and is like, "What are you doing?" And he gets mad at the teammate, and everybody gets mad at Claypool. And after all of the regular availabilities were done in the podium area, which is separate from the locker room, and I happened to be doing the podium area that night in Minneapolis, I thought everything was done in there, was getting ready to leave. The next thing I see, here comes Chase Claypool, like out of nowhere. So he gets up there behind the podium, and I asked the first two questions, like, what was he thinking when he did that? And something else that was related. Memory isn't giving me the exact thing right now, but it was all about that. It was about that mess that he'd made, and he answered it and whatever. And I looked over at one of the media relations people who had accompanied him in there, and I was like, oh, what the heck was that? Like, why was he here? And I got this little head tilt that strongly suggested that whatever I was thinking was correct, which was that Mike Tomlin wanted him in there. Tomlin wanted him to do exactly what I'm describing here regarding George. Why doesn't Tomlin want that now? I don't know. I can't answer that. I can take guesses based on the way Tomlin is kid-gloving him at every single step of this apparently regressing process. but I can't know it. I also can't know if Tomlin isn't taking George behind closed doors and reaming him out and telling him, you're never gonna da-da-da-da-da, and by the time you get in here on Thursday or Friday, you had better, or we'll give all of your snaps to Van Jefferson and we'll show everybody. I get why George is important. That's why I opened this show the way I did. You can't beat the Raiders or any team. This team can't beat any team without George contributing. That's just how it's constructed. So it's almost like he's the master switch in the process. If you decide you're going to turn off George or tick him off or whatever, that you're basically just boom with that switch, pulling it down on the wall. But I also understand that nothing about the George situation gets any better. And no, this is not a media concoction in any form. Those have happened in the past. Certain things have gotten exaggerated. Certain things have been misreported. Almost always, by the way, by people who don't actually cover the team. But this isn't one of those. Everybody saw the eye black. Everybody saw the jogging. Everybody saw the helmet thing at the end. This isn't like, whining about Juju's social media or any of that sort of nonsense. It really happened, and it's a real problem, and it's really got to get addressed. And part of that, even if it's just a small part, happens to be George standing there the way the rest of his teammates do. Doesn't seem like a real big ask on their part. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Thomas, who says, DK, don't get me wrong. I get why you're describing the wide receivers as a problem, and I acknowledge that the offensive line is a big problem. My question is, when do we accept that Arthur Smith is an even bigger problem? Game planning is poor and stubborn, and even when he dials up a good play, it's to the wrong player. Where are the tight ends we've heard so much about? Where's Pat Freiermuth? Is another wide receiver really going to solve this problem? You're not making unfair points at the risk of dropping a double negative on you here, Thomas. I think that there are going to be, over time, valid criticisms of Smith that span more than just a game or two. When I think of him throwing the deep ball to Darnell Washington, when I think of him, trying to hit Connor Hayward more often than he hit Freiermuth, that's not great. That's trying to out-trick yourself. That's trying to say, hey, look, we can be all of these other things before you're actually one thing. What he needs to do, I think, and this begins this weekend in Las Vegas, circle no more than 3 names on his offense. No more than 3, and say, these 3 players are either going to win me or lose me this football game, barring some extraordinary circumstance. Like, let's just say that the Raiders, for whatever reason, decide to double and triple team Freiermuth. All right, well, then you're not going to be dumb about it. But otherwise, you say, listen, I'm going to throw to Freiermuth, I'm going to throw to George Pickens, and Jaylen Warren was back on the practice field yesterday. I don't expect he's going to play. That's the general sentiment right now around the team. But if he does, you say, okay, I'll find ways to get him involved too. Maybe drop one to Calvin Austin occasionally and see if he can spring something. But otherwise, I'm going with my guys. I'm going with the 3 players who offer me the best chance to win this football game. I'm going to try to build up a foundation. And from a foundation, you can develop an identity. And from teams respecting those players making plays against you, then you can say, hey, let's get cute. Let's see if we can hit Darnell streaking down the left side. Let's see if we can try, a 20-yarder to Van Jefferson. You can't do that until you do the other stuff first. And multiply what I'm saying by, 88 if you don't even try. I'm going to repeat this statistic to you because it is staggering and it deserves all the repetition that it gets this week. Freiermuth was targeted in the first half Sunday night 0 times. 0. When he was really, really needed in the second half, including down by the goal line when it was clear Najee Harris wasn't going to get in, Smith turned to Freiermuth on the shovel pass. Nicely designed play, even better executed by both Fields and Freiermuth. That should tell you everything that you need to know. He was the guy you could have gone to the first time. He's the guy you could have gone to several times throughout the night, and you didn't. Because what? I don't know. So I'm not sitting here suggesting that anybody not criticize Smith or whatever. He's earned some of it already. But I'm going to tell you in the same breath, without apologizing, that as long as that line is getting ripped up the way they are, as long as plays are getting blown up before a quarterback can even make his reads, it's going to be really, really tough to identify Smith as the primary culprit. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Going to do one more of these tomorrow, and then it's off to Las Vegas.